Every year, 50% of new gym members quit within the first 6 months. And for every 100 people who sign up for an online course, 80 to 90 of them never reach the end. And, unsurprisingly, around 80% of New Year's resolutions fail by February. While it may seem, at first glance, as if quitting is just a shared trait among us all, there is a better way to explain it. What you see is a graph detailing the valley of disappointment. The period of time, usually in the beginning of a pursuit, when reality does not match the effort you put in and the expectations you have for it. After all, you are required to have faith in something you are not fully sure of. And I don't think there's any better example of this than Charles do Bronx Oliveira. After years fighting professionally, Charles had an okay record with a few more losses than you would like. And while he had aspirations of fighting for the title, they didn't seem at all realistic. Now the worst came when fighting against Max Holloway, Oliveira fell to the floor feeling absolutely paralyzed on his side and later on his legs. It seemed that not only was he never fighting for the title, he may never compete again. Now keep in mind that this is a guy that comes from the Brazilian favela, a place surrounded by poverty, crime, and violence. A man whose parents weren't even able to attend school and had to have multiple jobs between them simply to survive and feed the family. In his position, what could one do but lose all hope and faith that you are on the right path? How could you not be angry at the world? Now, I don't know how one comes back from this, however, the truth is that he did. After 4 months, he fought again and won. Now here's when you expect that the comeback starts, right? All uphill from here, and then he fights for the title and wins. Well, not exactly. Because he lost the next two, and then he won, and then he lost again. It seemed like he would be nothing more but a filler on the UFC cards. Yet, somehow, after that, he would go on a run that personally has been my favorite to watch ever. He won not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4 in a row, but 8 straight fights. And this would land him a chance to fight for the title against Michael Chandler. But even here, at the highest point of his career so far, he still had a very tough battle to fight through. In the first round, as they scramble and it starts, he almost gets knocked out. With a different referee, perhaps the fight would have been called here. However, as he comes back from his corner and the bell rings for the second round, well, let's just watch.
Chandler working off of that jab early. Oh! Knocked down for Oliveira now! Now a knee to the body for Charles and a right hand! Chandler's now Chandler is down! He's down! Charles!
An absolutely beautiful moment. More than a decade of work, suffering, and doubt, all resolved as the belt gets wrapped around his waist. The moment when all the dots connect. This moment, for how far it may seem from you right now, in whatever pursuit you have, is not only possible, but, I'd argue, inevitable, when you approach things the right way. But it all starts by understanding what is happening that the eye cannot see. The best way to understand this is to look at the ice cube example. And this is imagining you have a room that is minus 6 Celsius degrees. In that room, in a table, is an ice cube you're trying to melt. Now, for this to happen, you know that the temperature has to cross 0, and after that it will begin to melt. And the higher the temperature goes, the faster the ice cube will melt. And imagining, let's say here as you're putting effort in and putting more effort in, it gets warmer, the room, then you know, so minus 6, minus 5, minus 4, as it keeps increasing, you know that you're getting closer to that point where things will change and you get your result. The problem here, and comparing to the real life situation, is if instead of looking at the temperature changing and recognizing it's getting to this point, you look at just the end result, what do you see? Well, you'll see an ice cube that is still frozen. And as you're progressing through minus 6, minus 5, minus 4, minus 3, minus 2, minus 1, and up until the point that it crosses a bit over 0, you would be looking at the same thing. And if one were to judge himself and the situation just by the end result, you would be a failure. Because your goal was to melt it, and it's not melted. So you failed, right? That's what it means? No, you're just looking at the wrong thing. Because if instead of looking at the end result, you look at what is happening and the temperature is increasing, you know it's simply a matter of time. If it keeps going and you just give it time, it will get to that point, it starts to melt, and if you keep putting the efforts in, then it will keep increasing the temperature and it will melt faster and faster. And that is that point in the graph where you see things crossing, where you see the results, and then from then on, a lot of times, it is exponential. Yet, the problem remains and the question remains, which is, this is very easy to see when you take the ice cube example or other arbitrary examples like this, but what about things that matter? And whether that's about starting a business or a new career path or going to the gym or things like this, how does one stay with them? Because in the ice cube example, I know for sure it will happen, and that moment exists. But in other things, we are not so sure, and we have doubts, and it's hard to have faith in something you are not sure will happen. So then, the question remains, and that is, how does one survive this period? Now, unfortunately, the initial reaction in this stage, when you're feeling stuck and, a bit struggling with the belief that it's worth it, the number one thing most people do is try and search for some way, some system, some method to either make it faster or kind of give you that belief. The problem is that these solutions tend to be quite complex and complicated with a lot of steps, and they work in the beginning because they give you that motivation and that sort of excitement because of the new shiny object, but once that passes, you just become even more overwhelmed by the new thing that was supposed to help you with being more consistent and actually sticking with things. And here's when I do believe that we have it all wrong, and that we are essentially assuming something that is completely wrong and opposite of what is true. Because when you're feeling stagnated and stuck, the first thing we all assume is that I'm missing some information, some key here, and so I'm going to find it. And usually we believe that information has to be complex, has to be very detailed and with a lot of hours of courses and books and things like this. But I say it's the opposite. Because when we look at what we actually have to do, and whatever task it is that you're trying to attempt in the pursuit of the things you're attempting, usually when you look at it, this is not something complex. When you actually look at the step-by-step of what it requires to do the task. The problem is that our minds tend to overcomplicate everything. And instead of just getting up and going to do what you have to do and then figuring out after, what we do is that the thought or impulse to do the thing pops up, and then immediately after the thought unfortunately pops up, which is, should I be doing this? Is this worth it? Is this the right thing? Maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Maybe the other thing's better. And as we have this mental battle in our mind, and we waste effort and willpower and all of these things, we don't do anything. We just are wasting time. And by the time we realize that we should have gone in, so much time has passed that now it's easy to justify not doing anything and staying home and just doing it the next day, or maybe giving up completely. When if instead of doing all this, we would have just said, you know what, I'll just do it, then you would have done it. If you take a task, and I'm going to do here the most simple possible, let's say going to the gym. You may not be feeling like it, you may be tired, you may be exhausted, but if you look at things for what they are, and at this just for what it is, you would have recognized that these are the steps. It is get dressed, get your towel or your stuff, go out of the house and walk there. And then once you're there, you're going to just be working out and doing what you have. But in your mind, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like I'm going to have to get up and put on these clothes and I just feel so tired. And then is this even worth it? I'm just so worthless and I can't grow muscle and it's all for nothing. And it's just this mental fog and battle happening that is beyond the point and is beyond what is happening. And one may say here and question here, oh, but I'm not in control of that. I don't choose those things. I wish I could not have any of that and just go. And here I tell you, and perhaps you won't believe me right away, but I'll get to my point. I do believe that a certain part of you, maybe even you're not conscious of it, does not want to let go of this. Because the actions are fundamentally simple. And who says going to the gym? I could say, let's say, write the project you have to for school or for work. If I break it down to the steps, it is very simple. It is it will be almost ridiculous to consider why are you even struggling in doing these things. But the problem is that we overthink it. And the core reason behind why we overthink, and that's where we have to get to, is because we want to keep control. Because to just feel and go do what I have to do requires in a lot of ways a loss of control and a loss of this mind control that is just always thinking about everything and what is the purpose of all of these things and how are these things connected to the others and how is this progressing us towards our goal. You probably already have done that work. You already know why you're doing these things. You already know why you have to do what now you feel like you have to do. But to go from just feeling and then doing right away requires you to just give that control up. Let's say if now you feel, let's say you have a project to do and you're watching this video and you feel like, oh, I should do that. Imagine just feeling that, closing this video and starting to doing it. Most people have never done that. Perhaps you have never done that because you have to think about it and being like, oh, but is now the right time? Maybe later is better. Maybe I'll finish the video and then going doing it. But all that doesn't matter. The task is simple. Is you close the tab, you open a new one, and you start writing the thing you have to write. And that's it. The actions are simple. And if you really break them down even more, what is the action? Moving my hand and my eyes, coordinating them, click, click, and then type. That is it. Can you do that? Of course you can do. Can you do Can you do that? Of course you can do that. And can you do that even if you're feeling super shit in the worst day of your life that you're super tired? I'd argue you could do that. Just open the computer and type keys, because that's what you're already going to be doing. But instead of writing what you have to, you're just going to be fucking around and watching YouTube videos and playing video games and all these things. And if you look at the actions themselves, they're very similar. It's just what's going on in your mind that is different. And here we come to the conclusion, and that is beyond, because the first part is recognizing this and recognizing that, oh, I can actually just do these things, and they're much simpler than we initially think. But then the question becomes, okay, so how do I actually do this that you're saying about giving up control and just going from thinking to doing? And this is very similar to what I talked about in the previous video of flow state, and that it is fundamentally something that you can't even put into words. Because if I ask you, like the example I gave, how do you grab a glass of water and drink it? Do you need to think about this before you do it? Or let's say even to listen and understand the words that I'm saying now, do you need to think to understand? You don't. Perhaps you can think about it later, but you can then analyze and reason whatever about it later. But in the moment, these things happen and you can't fully put into words how they happen or why they happen or how does your brain says to your hand to move and to do things. These things you can't explain them, but you can do them. And you can do them without thinking. Actually trying to think about them would make it worse. If I tell you, okay, think about everything you're going to do before you do it. Think about breathing in, breathing out. The weight of your tongue in your mouth, the blinking your eyes, all this, and you start getting a bit overwhelmed and your life experience would be much worse. And so it is a bit frustrating. I know what I'm telling you here, and all this is to tell you that you already know how to do these things. And you already know how to overcome these periods. And that is simply by giving up control and fundamentally thinking less about things. If you already chose, you're already committed to this path, you already know why you're doing this path likely. If it's business because you want either more money or more freedom or both. If it's fitness because you're likely not happy with your body and you want to be better looking or healthier, if it's better relation, etc. You already know why, and you already know you should do it. But in those days when you don't feel like it, and perhaps you feel like you're so far from the point when you're actually going to see results, you start thinking, but what's all this effort for? What is all this trouble? And it feels like the effort you're putting in is immense, and like it is something as if you're lifting 1,000 kilos above your shoulders and you're carrying this rock every day with you, but it is not. What is heavy is the thoughts about the thing. Because if you wouldn't have the thoughts about it and you would just do the things you have to do and then move on with your life, you'd realize that the doing of these things is not that even that much time. You go to the gym, what is that, 1 hour every other day? That's not that much. What is the writing the articles? Sitting down 3 hours per week, 2 to write, 1 to edit? That's not that much. It is the problem is your mind and your impatience and your wanting to control and control not only the efforts but the results that puts this weight on you. But the best thing about it is that this as well is in your control to give up at any point. It simply requires, in a lot of ways, just like how you grab a glass of water and drink, or how you read the words on a page and you understand them without thinking about the act of reading, just like how you do this, you can also do the things that are progressing you to your goals. And the more you can give up this control and just do things and go about life without these expectations, the faster you're going to get to that point. And then you're going to realize, like, oh my God, it wasn't that hard. And now I'm seeing the results. And from then point on, it's easy, because now you don't need to have faith in something you're not sure if it exists or not, because now you know it exists. But until you get there, it is not about putting more control and more habits and routines and details and steps. I would argue it's less. It is just about doing the things you already know how to do without engaging in this mental battle inside.